Thank you very much, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is more than a great pleasure for me to be welcoming you all again this morning for the fourth symposium in this series of public symposium that, as we have discussed times and again, and last time I recall during our UNCTAD 13 conference in Doha, Qatar, that we would like to see this series of public symposium to be one which would be embedded in the UNCTAD's agenda, and it will be permanently on our agenda. As we have it at the moment, it seems to be based on a bit of a struggling from one year to another, which I hope that we would have the opportunity and the ability to address the issues in the future. But anyway, I'm most delighted to have all of you with us, you who represent multi-stakeholders, from governments, from parliaments, from businesses, academia, civil society at large, trade unions, and the media. You are most welcome. And as the President has already emphasized times and again, we would like to with you, generate honest discussions that would lead us not to skirt the key issues that are confronting us, challenging us at the moment, as we are now struggling how to get out of this deep pit of the post-recovery process, which seems to be so unstable, so immature, so irregular, that sometimes you see some events pointing in directions that we are moving in the right directions, but again, sometimes we are confronted with new challenges. Some of the things have been hidden since the crisis within the financial system that are beginning to be disclosed now. Some of the things that are still well hidden and probably will be disclosed sometime in the future that we will have to brace ourselves against, that would not again produce any disruptive impact on the global economy. We are seeing growth that is just really at the level at best anemic. It's just not sufficient for this growth to meet with the requirement to create jobs. If you only look at the statistics that UNCTAD has been producing on investment, last year, 2012, saw an investment flow around the world, foreign direct investment flow, drop by nearly 18%. And as you know, the foreign investment flows that used to be reached, the peak by 2007, just before the crisis, has not been reached since after the crisis. We have not reached it. And yet last year, there was a very strong drop in the level of flow around the world. So it means that we are now, if the peak was around $2 trillion in 2007, last year we've come down to about 1.3, at most 1.4 trillion. This is I don't know, 30–40% below the level of the peak of FDIs in 2007. How can we say that the world is just moving in the directions that we are recovering? I can't understand, because there seems to be predictions all around that last year we didn't do well, this year we may not be doing much better than last year, but next year will be better. And we keep saying this kind of things just to kid ourselves, which I don't think is good enough. So that's why we need honest discussion to be able to determine in front of us, maybe not very far ahead, because things are so unclear, so murky far ahead, that where we are at the moment. Let's talk about the truth. Let's talk about the kind of problem that is still there, challenging us, confronting us, that we have to overcome. And not to skirt over by saying with 1 month or 1 quarter, we're seeing some lights at the end of the tunnel. As they say that one swallow does not a summer make. I mean, for 1 quarter growth, it doesn't mean that the next quarter will be there, and then you see all this back and forth kind of unpredictable changes that has brought everything into confusion. So, and that is one of the reasons why we have chosen the theme for this public symposium to be this new economic approaches for a coherent post-2015 agenda. There are two things in this topic, in this theme. First is the new economic approaches. Can we really agree on some new economic approaches based upon our understanding or lessons that we have learned from crisis after crisis? I'll come back to this. The second part of the theme is the coherent post-2015 agenda. Can we see a coherent post-2015 agenda? Are we going to learn from the pre-2015 Millennium Development Goals so that we can determine that we would have a post-2015 agenda? You notice here we are saying 2015 agenda. We're not saying 2015 goals. Not the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, and not the Sustainable Development Goals, but agenda. Because we need agenda on the goals, and we need agenda on the processes, and on the instruments, on the wherewithal, on the means that we would need, the policies that we would need to get us there. So these are two major lines of thinking that we need to go through. One is, are we going to see some new approaches so that we can get out of this recurrent rut of crisis after crisis? Or it just, again, back to business as usual, as people are saying these days, things have already been patted over, and so we may go on as usual. It cannot be business as usual. It cannot be just new normal. There's no new normal as we see. There's nothing normal at the moment. And the post-2015 agenda, this is being, of course, handled, the process is being handled in New York with the high-level panel that has been set up by our Secretary General, and it has produced a report, a draft report, which I hope I can comment, give you some comments from my own personal thoughts for your deliberations. If we look at what we have to go through in the next couple of years, just to kick off the things that we may have to discuss, for UNCTAD, we have a series of events from 2015, 2014, next year 2015, and 2016. Because next year, 2014, will be, of course, taking a look at the past 50 years of UNCTAD development work. So it's going to be our commemoration or celebration, if you like, of our 50th anniversary of UNCTAD's existence, together with the G77 coming into existence. It's going to be a big year for UNCTAD to be looking backward for the last 50 years, but not only looking backward. I have asked my colleagues, and I have talked to G77 and China, that maybe looking backward is about 10 or 20%, but we need to look backward. But we need to take 70, 80% future forward-looking exercise as to where are we headed? Are we clear where we are going? And do we know what is the next generation of globalization is going to produce for us? More of the crisis? While we are talking about some reforms, are the reforms forthcoming? All these things will have to be discussed, and we will be commemorating our 50th anniversary by being realistic. Some good things have been done, some things that have been done that we maybe should have done something else better. There are things that we should do now, we need to do now or sometime in the future, and these are things that it would be nice if you would spend some time in talking about this post-2015 agenda and also looking forward for what kind of agenda that we at UNCTAD can undertake. For 2015, that is on the theme, on the topic anyway, we have to be looking at the post-2015 agenda and also the forthcoming Sustainable Development Goals. And I'll be coming back to talk to you a little bit about this goal so that these are my just preliminary thoughts on this goal, because I was told that, of course, based on this report that the high-level panel has just produced, there will be other reports that would discuss the kind of detailed issues and analysis that would underpin the 12 goals that have been presented to you, and I would just go through them quickly for you, for your information later. For 2016 is another key year because this will be UNCTAD 14 conference that we have already agreed with a membership that is to be organized by Peru in Lima. It will be UNCTAD Lima conference in 2016, and already with some of our colleagues in Lima, with Peru and the mission here, we have already started talking about what should be on the agenda for 2016. If I could have my wish and the membership could discuss about it, I would like to see the things that we discussed last year, that some of you were with us in Doha, the kind of development-led globalization. I would like to see our agenda to be filled with more contents and more programs of work that you and us and we at UNCTAD could join hands in trying to pursue and try to recommend to the UN agencies that are responsible also for development issues to join hands with us and to pursue further. So these are the three important dates, 2014, 15, and 16, that again, I would like to bring it forward to you. Now, there are different things that I recall, and we have discussed this at length, but just to refresh your memory and my own also as what we've been doing since 2012, UNCTAD's conference in Doha. There's still some of the areas in which I would find that we would certainly like to have your ideas and opinion on, and things are still on the agenda, not yet completely fulfilled, or sometime in some of the global governance meeting, some of these issues are not being pursued as we were expecting them to do. So I just list some of them so that we can refresh our memories and see what we can do in the next couple of days to put some contents and some understanding as to what we are lacking. The first thing is about the financial markets, and you might be a little bit bored by me talking about financial markets and other people listening to me talking about financial markets, because some of our friends in the financial market would like to believe that they would like to get on with their business as usual. Leave them alone. Don't come to us with more rules, regulation. Don't talk about too big to fail and all these other things. Leave us alone. I don't think we can do that, because post-crisis, post-2009, post-2010, we began to discover even more the kind of malfeasance, the kind of misconducts that have been disclosed through recent investigations, the speculative moves that have been just discovered, to the detriment of some major financial institutions. And of course, the tasks that we have to perform with cleaning up of the financial systems is not yet finished. In the United States, a lot of progress has been made. In Europe, again, people still question whether we have actually completed the task, or we have already begun effectively with the task of cleaning up the financial system. Because while we have cleaned up maybe the kind of dirt coming from the subprime crisis, subprime mortgages, the new non-performing loans, the kind of low quality papers that we are seeing in the case of Europe are coming from different directions altogether. They're coming from the direction of the sovereign debts, which used to be the top grade papers. And without the intervention of the European Central Bank, all these top grade papers would have been worth nothing or very little. Are we going to have to live with this kind of thing in the future, and waiting for the time that there might be no resources left, that we cannot cope with this, the new kind of non-performing loans that could erupt into another crisis in the future? Do we know how much banks are being saddled with this kind of low-quality debts? So the belief in the deregulated financial system, I wouldn't say it's still there. Maybe there is less of the belief, but still the system is allowed to persist, to perform, or to non-perform in a way that I don't see that the powers that be are really tackling all these issues. We've seen at the moment, the near breakdown of the multilateral trade negotiations. Of course, we would have this year the 9th Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization in Bali, Indonesia. Of course, we are seeing the efforts to have an early harvest. But so far, the talks about multilateral agreements on trade facilitation, plurilateral negotiation on services, the kind of LDCs, the least developed countries market access, the duty-free, quota-free market access, the kind of the spatial and differential treatments that could be accorded to the developing countries, whether all this could be incorporated into the development agenda to be harvested early, still a very difficult road ahead of us, but I know that our colleagues at the WTO are working very hard, at least, to keep the whole negotiation alive. We've been seeing the kind of efforts of quantitative easings. After quantitative easing, after QE, QE1, QE2, QE3, the question that has been put at the moment is that have all the QEs and the present ongoing QEs been producing the kind of support, stimulus that has been helpful to the countries to revive themselves so that they can become stronger and be part of the growth process? Or the QEs after the QEs, because as you know, fiscal stimulus have been effective, but monetary stimuli have not always been effective. And if you put in more money into the banking system that is not working, you're not going to make the banking system work better with more money. They have to clear up the banking system, put in more money, and it will work. But what happens with a huge influx of trillions of funds into the QE system? They have flown all over the world, and mainly to the poor countries, with high level of interest rates, no management of capital flows, driven up all these currencies upwards, killing off all the nascent growth perspectives for all these countries. So while we have doubts about the effects of QEs in the advanced economies, QEs have already produced a lot of bubbles around the world. Currencies going up, making all these poor economies less competitive. Real estate prices have been going through the roof in some of the poorer countries. Stock exchanges in Asia have gone through historical peaks after peaks. Whether they are supported by the kind of real performance in the real sectors, for some countries, yes. For some countries, may not be fully the case. The social discontent that we are seeing around the world. Last year, we were talking about the Arab Springs. This year, there are springs all over the place. It's not only in the Arab countries. There are springs all over the place. In some minor cases, in some countries, with some minor issues, you can see unprecedented participation by people on the street. The social discontent, I said last year, cannot be underestimated. It's not only now one food vendor that has kicked off all these things. He did it so well. He sacrificed himself in Tunisia. But the whole process of occupy this, occupy that, we are the 99%, it's all over the world. What are we going to do with all this occupy and all the spring and discontents? The so-called inequitable distribution of gains from development. This has become a key issue. Even at the Davos meeting, where people would talk about finance and things like that, they have become more perplexed with the way that growth cannot handle the unequal distribution of gains. So this is going to be not only to create jobs, not only gender equality, with some of the basic fundamental needs that we have, but also how to redistribute gains around the world within one's own countries, different regions. Now we are talking about the new forms of trade, the global value chain. Is global value chain going to bring more progress or new adjustment to us, as we have been now elaborating in our new, to be launched, our new report on world investment report that I would launch it this afternoon. How to define inclusiveness? We agreed on inclusiveness, that it would be about, let's say, inequality. Is it going to be about multilateralism, regionalism? What is it going to be about? Is it going to be about the new the new global governance that would help to establish the inclusivity. So there are a lot of questions open up that has been opened up by our meetings last year, and we have been continuing trying to make headways with the way we fill in some of the responses to all these questions. But we need your response. We need your concerns and your thoughts and your opinion. Let me end by just giving you a few of my comments on the report that has been produced from New York. That is a report on the new goals, the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. If you have seen the report that has already been launched, you would see that instead of 8 goals from the MDGs, there are now 12 goals. Now, can we say that if you have more goals from 8 to 12, are we going to get better by having more goals? Well, I have to be polite with the people that have produced all these goals. I said, well, maybe it would help us to be more comprehensive. Because the last time in the MDG goals, with the 8 goals, we were commenting that there are a lot of social laudable goals, many good goals on maternity, health, on enrollment ratios, on water supply, on HIV/AIDS, on many things on social goals. But there were too few economic goals. There was no goal on jobs. There was no goal on jobs. There was no goal on capacity building, productive capacity, as UNCTAD has been trying to establish. So now we have 12 goals. I don't want to prejudge because I haven't seen the background studies to support on this goal. But I have the reports which give us some glimpse of what these goals are all about, and maybe you should spend some time because you're going to look at the post-2015 agenda, and you have to see whether there is coherence. There is coherence in this agenda, so much so that we can have synergies between all these goals, because social goals are not always reachable without economic goals. Definitely not. When you talked about social protection, without talking about growth, without talking about government revenue, fiscal reforms, financial reforms, you're not going to get the social protection. Or you will get social protection by heaping up a lot of debts, as you've seen in many advanced countries, that the social welfare programs are now supported by the accumulation of debts and can only be resolved by extension of the retirement ages, which is not going to be tenable. You cannot extend indefinitely the retirement age of people. We're going to work until we are 80 years old before we can eliminate all this debts that have been incurred because of the generosity within the social welfare program. So let me go through some of the goals that I have looked at, and maybe just to give you some comments, and then I would end. Goal number one, which is about the end of poverty. This is highly laudable, because you remember from the last time Millennium Development Goal, we were so-called to halve global poverty. Now in goal number 1, we are going to end poverty. End poverty. And by ending poverty, one key area, sub-goals in the ending of poverty, is that to cover a certain percentage of global population who are poor and vulnerable with social protection system. This is very crucial and very important. I have tried for the UNCTAD 13 conference in Doha to set up some panels that would discuss sustainable social protection. Because this is all about. We can easily talk about social protection without having it sustained. Because if you cannot have the revenue of the government that would be responsive to the size of the entitlements, you're not going to sustain it. So the first goal of end poverty is, for me, the question that we have to discuss about the social protection systems that we're going to create. We don't want to create another social system or a lot of social protection system in poorer countries that they cannot sustain, that would give rise to new rounds of debts, and that they would have to borrow more to sustain the system. Cannot be done like that. Goal number 4 is a goal that talks about ensuring healthy lives. Ensuring healthy lives, very laudable. again, we find back the maternal mortality ratio, children health, infantile health, the key pandemics, HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, tropical diseases. Now, the thing that maybe you would have to look at is how, again, are we going to sustain this lofty ensuring of healthy lives if we don't talk about also the kind of self capacity to build up your own capacity to meet with the requirement through the kind of trade, multilateral trading system. The system that we have generated at WTO, for example, the TRIPS and public health. If the TRIPS and public health that has been created to take care of the universal health care has not been practiced, and you can look at that, it has not been fully practiced because of a lot of impediments from the private sector side, public sector side. If we cannot have that kind of a TRIPS and public health flexibility, then to reach the goal number 4, it would be again another tall order, because we cannot always rely on just charity. We have to rely on parallel importing. We have to rely on the domestic capacity for countries to be able to produce their own generic medicine, right? And that is something that was supposed to be given on a flexible manner by the TRIPS and public health, but it's not always done, and very little done. Very little has been done on this, and we will have to ask why it has not happened and what can be done in the future. Goal number 5, ensuring food security and good nutrition. I have nothing at all against that. In fact, goal number 5 has been one of the highest goals that we have adopted at UNCTAD, as you can see if you follow what I have been saying. But what we are very much trying to figure out is how we can support government's effort to mobilize funds, because we ask government to mobilize at least 10% of their budget so that they can support agricultural development that will meet with the food insecurity issue, particularly in Africa. But we are seeing most countries meeting only half of that. So the majority of the funds may need to be mobilized from the private sector. How are we going to do that, fix that, without allowing people to abuse it? So of course you've seen that UNCTAD has been working with FAO, World Bank on the responsible principle for agricultural, private agricultural investment. We have to find ways to make that code of conduct a universal one, a one that will be accepted by the UN and also the international community. Goal number 8 talks about equitable growth, exactly what we were talking about in Doha. We have talked about several of the measures, you might recall, and we have put that into one of our reports, the trade and development reports in the last few years. One thing we discussed, the kind of targeting, monetary targeting, whether we should target inflation or we should target growth at the same time as inflation. We were talking about the kind of equitable growth that could be derived by having the right wage and income policies. Are we seeing this being adopted in countries? We're not seeing this because people talk more about fiscal or monetary, but wages and income policies has not been discussed. We were talking about misdiagnosis of economic elements, misdiagnosis. There are countries that need to support growth, to support demand in their own countries, but have just skipped that step to go over to fiscal consolidation that has killed off any growth, any jobs creation perspectives, and still going on like this. So we are seeing, if we are talking about goal number 8 of creating jobs, sustainable livelihoods, and equitable growth, we have to talk about the new pathways in our macroeconomic policy as well. And the last things that I would like to leave with you, beg your understanding and need your discussion, is goal number 12, which is the last goal in this series of post-2015 agenda. Goal number 12 talks about creating a global enabling environment, catalyzing long-term finance. Now, the thing that worries me is that this goal talks about reform of the global financial system. we may need to help in emphasizing that we've been talking like this for years since the crisis. The reform of the global financial system. Are we there? You can see that we have done a little bit at the Basel meeting, at the Basel, the BIS, the Basel III. But the Basel III is only for banks' equity. It's only bank equity, and this is postponed until, I don't know, sometime in the future, 2015, or sometime beyond that. And so banks, the way that we would have to track down how they speculate, shadow financing, derivatives, hedge funds, the sizes of banks, the so-called the sizable, vulnerable banks, that when they collapse, they pocket the private gains, but we socialize the loss all the time. You all pay, we all pay as taxpayers. How can we deal with that? This has not been settled. And what about global governance, global economic governance? Are we going to see the same kind of Bretton Woods treatments that we've seen for the last, I don't know, three or four decades? And they're still pursuing the same line. If you look at the IMF conditionalities in the last few days, they're still very much restrictive, very much not counter-cyclical as we've been trying to establish, but still very pro-cyclical in the way that you have to first treat the fiscal discipline, and then you can grow. But this is not the way things happen, because if you treat fiscal discipline along that line, more austerity, more unemployment, less growth. The case of Greece has been cited. 5 years, Greek economy has been shrinking. How many years Greek economies will have to be made to shrink before we can see the final solution for Greece? This has been 5 years. This is going to be the 6th year. Already shrunk by 25%. Is Greece going to shrink by 50%? 90%? How many? Because there is no end in sight. So these are things that I'm really very concerned. I'm really concerned, and I have to thank all of you and all the panelists, discussants who are going to contribute to the debate. Mr. President has already thanked the moderators, Mr. Miles from Reuters and Ms. McGovern from BBC, who are going to help us with no fees in helping moderating the session. I certainly would like to take this opportunity to thank the governments of Austria, China, India, and Indonesia, and the Friedrich Ebert Foundation for providing financial support to enable some representatives of civil society to participate and contribute to the symposium. My dear friend, Ambassador Tillerberdi, he's already made announcements, so I just reiterate that there will be a reception to be hosted by Ambassador Tillerberdi this evening to welcome all participants, and I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate our thanks and gratitude for his kind initiative and generosity again, and again to thank particularly the Kazakh government, because we have just been together to a special forum, Astana forum, that has initiated the discussion on UNCTAD's 50th anniversary commemoration. I also wish to thank the United Nations Non-Governmental Liaison Service and other civil society organization networks for their excellent collaboration and support. Special thanks also go to Webster University in Geneva, who is supporting the event by ensuring social media and video coverage for our wider audiences. I really very much look forward to our engaging debates. Thank you very much for your attention.